Hey, this is OXDS, and today I'm looking at Advent of Code 2022, Day 4, Camp Cleanup. Now, I was actually, unusually for me, awake at midnight last night when this challenge went live. I was watching Michigan football win the Big Ten, go blue, and I came up here and tried to compete, actually. And it's a humbling experience, as always, as I fumbled around for a good 8 or 9 minutes, only to see that I would have needed 3 minutes to make the top 100, which is all they keep. It was like 3:22, I think was the cutoff, so... Um, it's humbling. But anyway, so I have already solved this, but we're gonna go back and kind of solve it more cleanly. I was kind of again going for speed inefficiently, but going for speed and just sort of doing some things kind of funky. I will include that code in my repo, so you can take a look at it if you want. But hopefully we'll do it better here today. So let's take a look at the challenge. I'm going to skip through the kind of story part, but basically what they're going to give us is a list of lines like this. Each line will have two elves or two, I think, EIDs or something, two items with a start and an end point. So it starts on 2, ends on 4, starts on 6, ends on 8. For part 1, I need to go through each of these lines and look for any that are completely contained within each other. So for example, 6 to 6 is completely contained within 4 to 6. 3 to 7 is completely contained within 2 to 8. But that's it for this group of example data. And you can sort of see it lined out here. So here's this 3 to 7 completely contained. Here's contained because endpoints do count. So that's our challenge. And the answer is going to be 513. So you'll know it when we get there. We will do some gen day here on day 4. And go to our stub that creates for me. That script, I explained it in the day 1 video. It's in the repo if you want to check it out. So we got our lines. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to start by doing this with a loop. So we'll say, you can say part 1 equals 0. You can say for line in lines. And we have, so we'll say like elf1, comma, elf2 equals line dot split like this. And then we can say like x1 equals list map. Well, let's see. I'm kind of jumping ahead in my head here, but we'll say e1 dot split like this. We should grab example user here. Just put right at the top here like that. So we've already split it. So now E1 is basically like 22-88. So we're going to split that again like that. And now we want to turn each of those into, we'll have a list that's too long, and we want to make all the items in the list into integers. So we could do a list comprehension, or I just in this case like to do like list map int. That will apply the int function to each item in this list. We can grab this exact same thing and go ahead and make this x2 and e2. And now we just need to figure out how to count. And so we'll say we're looking for whether they are completely contained. There's 2 ways that happens. Elf1 is contained in elf2, or elf2 is contained in elf1. So we'll look at both of these. So we'll say if, and now we're going to say x1 sub 0 is less than or equal to x2 sub 0. So in this case, x1 is the one that starts lower. And if that's the case, it's only going to, x2 can't contain x1. X1 can only contain x2. So we're going to say, and in this case, we'd say x2 sub 1, the endpoint of x2 is less than or equal to the endpoint of x1. Oops, like that. So if the endpoints go x1 starts, x2 starts, x2 ends, x1 ends, that's contained. So like that. We can also do or and do just the opposite. So what if, in this case, x2 starts, then comes x1 starts, and x1 is going to end before x2 ends. So there's 2 ways we get to contained, and in either of those cases, we're just going to say part 1 plus equals 1. Now we can come here and do a part 1. And I believe we should be good there. So let's do a Python day 4 input.text. We get 298. That's not quite correct. Let's see. We have x1 0 is less than x2 0, and then we have x2 of 1 less than or equal to x1 of 1. That seems right. x2 of 0 is less than x1 of 0, and x1 1. This should not be a 0. This should be a 1. Try that again. There's our answer, 513. Sweet. So, hopefully hopefully you follow that. We could do this as a list comprehension. So we could come down here and do something like, so we'll say line for line in lines. So that'll just give us all our lines, right? Now for each line, what do we want to do? Well, we want to take the line and first we want to split it on the comma. So we'll say line.split like that. So now this will be a 2 array, basically being like 28 through 88 and 85 through 88. So now we're gonna actually loop over this. We'll come over here and add another list comprehension here, and we can say E for E, or let's say this, we'll make it elf. Elf for elf in line.split. And for each of these elves, what are we gonna do? Well, we want to first split it on that, and then we want to make each of those into integers. So we can say list map int on that, like that. And so now we're going to have this thing, which we'll call like pairs, is equal to that. Let's run this, and I'm going to put a -I in Python. And what that's going to do is it's going to run my script to the end. It's going to print part 1, part 2, and now it's going to return me a Python prompt. So now I can say, like, what does pairs look like? And we can see, if we look at like pairs sub 0, it matches this. So here's our 28, 88, and 85, 88. So that's kind of cool. We've got those. Now we can say like P for P in pairs, and that'll give us all of them. But we only want to get the ones that meet these criteria. So let's say if, and we'll do this or that. And the first one is going to be P sub 0. So the first P, starting point, there's a 0, is less than or equal to P sub 1, starting point, and P sub 1, ending point, is less than or equal to P sub 0, ending point, like that. There's our first and our second one's going to be the exact opposite, so we'll do P sub 1, starting, less than or equal to P sub 0, starting, and P sub 0, let's help if I can type here, P sub 0, ending point, is less than or equal to P sub 1, ending point. Now, if that's true, then this list right here will be the list of all the ones that meet our criteria. And so if that's the case, we can do len after that. And we can say like list part 1 equals that. And we can assert that part 1 is equal to list comp part 1. And what's going to happen is that's going to throw an error if we made a mistake. See? And it doesn't. So we've shown that this basically list comp, this is a second way to get the same thing. Let's look at part 2. In part 2, we're going to still look at things, but this time we're looking for anything that overlaps at all. So it doesn't need to be contained, just if there's any overlap. And the answer is going to be 878. So let's go ahead and take a look. We can come up here and do this in our loop originally. So we'll say part 2 equals 0. And we can come down here and just do a second thing. So we'll say if, and we're going to have to look at both cases again where which one starts first, but that's okay. So we can say if x1 starts before x2, x2 starts, and now here's how do we overlap? Well, basically what the overlap means is basically that the x2 start is going to be less than or equal to x1's end. So if x1 starts first, but x2 starts before it ends, well, then we're good there. Or we need to do the same thing here. So this time we'll say x2 starting is less than x1 starting. So if x1 starts first, in this case, we want to make sure that x1 starts before x2 ends. And if I type that all out correctly, we will get the correct answer here. We can put part 2 there. We'll run this, and we did not get the right answer, so we get to troubleshoot. Let's see. So x1 comes first, and x2 starts before x1 ends. And here we have x2 starts first. We definitely need an equal sign there. And we have x1 starting before x2 ends. So that looks better. Let's try again. 878, we got it. I'll leave making a list comprehension for the second one as an exercise for the user, but I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thanks for sticking with me on this one, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.